How healthy is the healthiest diet ever? Hello, I'm Dr. Sam. This is Dr. Sam's Health. Today we continue my diet review series, and specifically I would like to continue our conversation about the Mediterranean diet. In my last video I did my best to introduce this diet and to provide you with some sort of an operational definition of this diet. We spoke about its composition, which is essentially this diet is a plant-based diet, not necessarily vegetarian or vegan, but the bulk of this diet consists or comprises of plant-based sources of nutrients, primarily vegetables. It has decent amount of olive oil, which is one of the staples of this diet. Of course, there are some fruit, which are used mostly as like desserts or sweets, and some moderate amounts of dairy products, cheese, some red meat, some seafood. Actually, just because of the geographical location of this diet, it's only natural to expect that there will be some seafood in this kind of nutritional style. And we spoke about this diet. The main reason why we actually spoke about it is because this diet is associated with amazing health outcomes. And at this point, I think it's the perfect moment for me to make my regular disclaimer, since we're talking about health-related things. I'm a medical doctor. Yes, I'm a practicing physician, but I did not provide any kind of medical advice in my videos. And the opinions that I express in my videos or on my website, drsamshealth.com, or in my book, The Rational Diet, are the opinions of mine. They do not necessarily represent the opinions or statements made by my regulatory bodies, my colleges, universities, or my profession, which is psychiatry. With all the disclaimers made, I think we are ready to talk about the health impact of this diet. And as a doctor, I'm very happy to talk about this. I'm actually surprised that I haven't done this video a while ago. This is a wonderful diet. We almost universally agree, I mean, healthcare professionals, that it's a very good diet. I personally believe that this diet is so good that I actually included it as one of the nutritional styles, recommended nutritional styles in my book. The book is dedicated to weight loss. We'll talk about weight loss associated with this diet in my next video. But today I would like to summarize the literature on the positive health impact of this diet. And when I say literature, there are actually hundreds, if not thousands, of various studies of various designs that describe the impact of either switching on this diet or being on this diet for many years. And since there are so many different studies, literally likely thousands of them, and so many different methodologies that are used in these studies in different populations that have been studied, it's actually very hard to summarize everything, but we're lucky, as always, because there are people who do study specific nutritional approaches, and the Mediterranean diet is not an exception to this. So I was fortunate to find a very nice review article by Lucas Schwingschackel, I hope I pronounced this name right, and co-authors, and they have made a systematic review of all the literature on Mediterranean diet and associated health outcomes, and it is some sort of a review of meta-analysis, because they have very wonderful summary tables in this article. I will add the link to this article to the description for this video, and they were able to actually locate the best evidence that exists about this diet and summarized it in a very nice fashion. So what I will do right now, just go through the table in this wonderful article, and I'll go over all the categories that they have included into it. And please don't be surprised. Sometimes we tend to idealize things, including this wonderful diet, and we expect that it will help with everything. Actually, when we do more or less comprehensive research, sometimes they find it's a little bit surprising. Like in this case, for example, the impacts on all-cause mortality, so all causes of death, and cardiovascular disease are actually not statistically significant. So they give like relative risks of dying or relative risk of having cardiovascular issues, and they include one, which means that we are not sure whether this diet is helping or not. And the reason why it is happening is because usually these categories, they include a huge variety of different conditions, and this diet might be helpful for one kind of condition, but not helpful for others. And the average outcome kind of is negligible. Or if we are talking about something like, say, cardiovascular disease as a general category, we won't see much of an impact. But if we go into more granular analysis, we'll see that there are some impacts, such as, for example, this diet significantly reduces the risk of coronary heart disease, approximately by 35%, of stroke and heart failure. Actually, stroke is similar to the coronary heart disease, just by 35%, and heart failure is like the risk is just 30% of the risk in general population. There are no observable effects on different kinds of cancer, or there were no studies, but it does significantly affect the risk of breast cancer. It pretty much halves it. There are no effect on prostate cancer, no documented effect on gastric cancer. There is a significant impact on type 2 diabetes, again around 30%. Hypertension, ironically or interestingly for me, there are no effects on obesity, which is interesting and kind of leads to the discussion we're going to have in my next video. There are not too many data points on chronic inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, COPD, asthma, hip fracture, frailty in general, eye disease. And actually, this article shows that the evidence in terms of global cognition or dementia is, let's say, not very well defined. So it's very close to being marginally statistically significant, but I think we'll have like one special paragraph or chunk of discussion here about effects of this diet on cognition. And there are no effects on depression, which actually funny because I've seen quite a few articles talking about how important it is to use the Mediterranean diet to reduce the risk of dementia and reduce the risk of mood disorders and anxiety. I cannot come up with anything off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I've seen quite a few articles showing that people who are following the Mediterranean diet are doing better in terms of their mental health. As a matter of fact, while doing some research for this video, I found a nice meta-analysis showing a variety of studies studying cognition in elderly patients or seniors, and this review clearly showed that the Mediterranean diet has very positive impact on global cognition. But if we go into more granular aspects of this diet or aspects of cognition, the outcomes are not that well defined. But I've got a strong feeling that I might need to make a special video about the impact of the Mediterranean diet on cognition and mood disorders in general. Now I would like to talk about a couple of risk factors that are associated with a variety of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular conditions. And this diet is clearly associated with significant improvement in, at least in this study, in body weight, waist circumference, total cholesterol. It is associated with a reduction of LDL cholesterol or like bad cholesterol, and increase in HDL cholesterol, which is good cholesterol, decreased levels of triglycerides, decreased levels of glucose, HAMA-IR, insulin, glycated hemoglobin, which is one of the markers of pre-diabetes or diabetes, and positive changes in systolic and diastolic blood pressure, CRP, and many other metabolic markers. So I think it totally makes sense to connect these parameters, metabolic parameters, with a number of other conditions which I have just mentioned that are essentially related to metabolism. So things like congestive heart failure, strokes, pretty much any kind of cardiovascular or cerebrovascular conditions that are associated with atherosclerosis. And this diet definitely helps. We have noticed that in one part of this review, they mentioned that it doesn't have much impact on obesity, but in the other part of the review, this diet actually is clearly associated with much, much better metabolic outcomes. So the big question is whether this diet is helping with weight loss or not. And I'll tell you that. I'll definitely make a video about that because I want to see the quantifiable uh, results, and that takes a special kind of search. But now I would like to say that this diet includes so many wonderful components. Omega-3 fatty acids, it's very balanced. It implies the reduction of consumption of various things that are not associated with good outcomes, such as like processed food, added sugars, high quantities of alcohol, and so on. So this diet is actually a very healthy, very balanced diet, and it leads to improvement of metabolic parameters. But when we talk about weight loss, my educated guess would be that this diet is associated with weight loss only when the main principle that I outlined in my book is followed, which is restricted caloric intake. We have to create caloric deficit in order to lose weight. And we can do it in a variety of ways. And the Mediterranean diet, in terms of the qualitative parameters of this diet, the composition of this diet is just amazing. But if you want to lose weight, you have to add caloric deficit to it, or just consume the same things in much smaller quantities. So, having said that, I think I have provided you with enough evidence. I will write a nice blog about it. It will be a little bit more detailed, and sometimes it's easier to follow the written word. And I will definitely add the references to these articles I'm quoting here to my blog. So please check out my blog on my website, drsamshealth.com. I've got also some tools for you that you can use for weight loss if you're interested in this kind of journey. Check out my book, The Rational Diet. I've got a page there on my website too. And thank you for watching. My next video will be specifically dedicated to the impact of the Mediterranean diet on weight loss. Thank you. See you soon.